there's a lot of bad news for Alabama right now. Notre Dame might join that club as well if they don't win this week.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest and craziest sport on planet Earth. 3 top 20 teams to keep an eye on. Just keep an eye on them because they look great over the weekend. I'm just saying. And I'll make my game pick for TCU at North Carolina. TCU, yeah, I like TCU there. This episode brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. So, Alabama loses to Florida State. Shocker of the first week of college football. I thought Alabama would win because, well, they have a much better roster on paper, but those games are played on the field. And Alabama is just a mess. They look like there is a disconnect. There was a pretty damning film breakdown of defensive effort by Emmanuel Acho the other day. Like, nothing is good for the Crimson Tide. Let me start with the bad news for Alabama because it goes beyond the Florida State loss and how bad everything looked in that game. And it's going to continue as the season goes along. And then I'll get to Notre Dame, who lost to Miami, and I still think Notre Dame's a good team, but boy, they better win this week. So Alabama has several high-profile games remaining on its schedule. This one against Florida State wasn't supposed to be, and yet it was. You know how every single year we say, hey, there's going to be a preseason AP top 10 team that ends the year unranked. Alabama has an incredibly real shot to be that team. They shouldn't be. They have way too much talent across this roster for that to be the case, but that's what we're staring at right now. So they play UL Monroe this week. You better not have a good first half. Wisconsin the following week. Well, they might be on a backup quarterback still at that time. I'm not. Actually, I don't know what to not be worried about with Alabama, but they play at Georgia. They have to play at South Carolina, and they have to play Tennessee and Oklahoma at home. Now, Oklahoma, we'll see. I think Oklahoma is a good team. I don't know if they're the number 18 team in the country. We'll see when they play Michigan this week. But did you watch what Tennessee did over the weekend? They played a Syracuse team that is absolutely a pullback program for this year in the ACC. I like Fran Brown a lot. That Syracuse team lost a lot from last year. They're not even close to the same. I think they're still respectable, and Tennessee looked pretty darn good, because the offense was clicking with Joey Aguilar, who we all wondered, how is he going to look against a higher level of competition? This guy was at junior college. He was at Appalachian State, never started for UCLA. Now he's at Tennessee, and he went out there and made plays and made throws. Suddenly that game that coming into this year, I thought, yeah, Alabama's going to be just fine in that one. That seems far more losable after week one than it did coming into the year. So my question for Alabama, how are you getting to the playoff? How are you getting there? You have a non-conference loss. Okay. So you've got 8 SEC conference games. Thankfully, this is the last year that I'm going to be able to say that. But at Georgia seems like a pretty steep mountain to climb. Is anyone thinking Alabama can go win that game? They've got 2 opportunities and a bye week to get themselves prepared to go to Athens and win. Going to put that one down as a loss, Bob. I'm going $1, Bob. $1. Does South Carolina seem like it's going to be an easy game? I don't think so. Apparently, if you can get into Alabama's backfield, which is not that difficult, it seems. Ask Virginia Tech how easy it is to run on the on the South Carolina front four. It's not. It's not very easy at all. So the path to the playoff for Alabama here is incredibly narrow. Incredibly narrow. Unless Florida State becomes a top 10 team, that loss is going to be held against you for 2 reasons. Number one, you lost by 14 points. And number two, it'd be to, I mean, at best, a top 15 team, top 20. But regardless, there's a team that, well, if you're then battling to be one of the top 12 teams, now you lose the head-to-head. That's kind of a double-edged sword. You can only lose one more game this year, unless you're going to lose 2 games in the SEC, somehow make the conference championship game, and Clemson your way into the playoff like last year. Yeah, Alabama's got some real problems there. And so Kalen DeBoer, I think, should be coaching for his job the rest of the year. If he does not get to the playoff for a second straight season, I'd make the move. His buyout's reportedly in the $70 million range. Yep, it's a lot. Texas A&M did it with Jimbo Fisher. I think they're better because of it. So that's a problem for Alabama. Here's a problem for Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame is a good team. I thought they would win on the road against Miami. CJ Carr made the one mistake that ended up costing the Irish the game. He's a redshirt freshman. Those things happen. Overall, kind of looks like a gamer. Kind of looks like he can play. Very nearly led a 10-point comeback in the fourth quarter, and Mario Cristobal's conservative approach to the game was just enough to wind up getting the win because he's recruited very well and there's a lot of talent on the field. Notre Dame this week against Texas A&M has to win, or the likelihood they get to the playoff will rest on USC's shoulders. The Trojans will have to turn themselves into a premier team for Notre Dame to look at their resume and go, look, we got to win there. And we barely lost to Miami. And you said, College Football Playoff Committee, that you were evaluating these games in such a way that losses to good teams weren't overly punitive. You said that. That's what Notre Dame's case is going to have to be. They have Miami game 1. That's already a loss. Texas A&M. The 12-team playoff has reduced the urgency of the regular season. It has not taken it out. You have a little bit more leeway. You don't have unlimited leeway. And so that's why the playoffs should never be expanded again. That's just me. Texas A&M is the last currently ranked team on Notre Dame's schedule. Boise State's not doing anything for you. They might have previously, but they got blasted by South Florida, so that's not worth anything. But here's the rest of Notre Dame's schedule this year. After the Texas A&M game, which is their home opener this week. I mean, I cannot stress the importance of that game enough if Notre Dame wants to get into the playoff. Purdue at Arkansas, Boise State, NC State, USC at Boston College, Navy at Pitt, Syracuse at Stanford. I can guarantee you right now, Stanford, Syracuse, Pitt could sneak into the top 25, but probably not inside the top 20. Boston College, NC State, probably not Boise State by the time. I mean, they'd have to win the rest of their games. And boy, that looked like, should Ashton Genty have gotten the Heisman? Maybe. Boise State, Arkansas, Purdue, most of those teams not going to find their way into the top 25. And by the way, even if a couple of them do, where are they going to be? They're not ranked right now. They don't have the benefit of preseason ranking bias to boost their perception in the eyes of the playoff committee. So they'd have to wildly overperform their preseason expectations to give Notre Dame a quality win. At least one of these teams, Notre Dame and Alabama, is going to miss the playoff. And it is far more likely that both of them miss it than both of them make it. What a time to be alive. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hit me up on Twitter. Other teams that are having some struggles, I'd keep an eye on these 3 teams. First, this episode brought to you by the Game Cap. Quick question for all you college football fans out there. If you could go back in time and sit front row at your school's biggest rivalry game, what hat would you be wearing? Yes, I said hat. For me, it would be the game. These aren't just hats. They're the same vintage styles fans wore back in the 80s and 90s, and guess what? They still go for the same price they did back then. When you use the code LOCKEDON, you will get your vintage hat for $16.99. Head to thegamecaps.com. That's thegamecaps, all one word there, smushed together.com, thegamecaps.com. Grab your team's classic bar or retro circle design and use code LOCKEDON for an exclusive discount because legends wear the game. When you go to rivalry games this year and you want to showcase with your own attire the tradition of college football, thegamecaps.com is indeed the place to go. And if you want to go to games this year, Game Time is the way to do that. College football's back. I'm loving it. You're loving it. Everybody does. Tailgates, rivalries, energy, playoff urgency, hot seat talk. There's nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. You've got endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. You don't want to mess with any of that. Game Time is here to help. The app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. So let's say you know the section you want to sit in, but you don't know, how do I find the best deal in that section? Well, Game Time has zone deals. You pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save big. They've got a bunch of perks. You want to use Game Time to get tickets for college football games this year. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Locked On College Football fans, I appreciate you all very much for listening to or watching the show. We have an important request. Locked On, this very network, wants to hear from you. We've put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcasts like this one even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't like, and answer questions about our advertising. Go to lockedonpodcasts.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes a survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcasts.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. Thank you so much in advance for helping us out. So speaking of Texas A&M, as I did earlier in the show, not the best start to the year for Mike Elko and company. Now, the offense goes for 42 points, and there is good news here. This is the definition of a no vibe outcome. UTSA head coach Jeff Traylor, who once upon a time was a leading candidate, potentially, or one of the leading targets to be the Texas A&M head coach. It ended up going to Mike Elko, of course, and Jeff Traylor's a really good coach. Marcel Reed goes for 289 and 4 touchdowns against the Roadrunners. Meep. I think that is the best sign and the best thing you can say about this game. Casey Concepcion got involved, had a 31-yard reception and a touchdown. Marcel Reed, 289, 4 touchdowns, an 82.6 QBR that's graded out of 100. Yeah, that's what you're looking for, because that's one of the questions. How does Texas A&M get over the hump? Marcel Reed has to be better as a passer. They didn't run the ball as well as you'd like to see in this game, but when you can throw the ball well, hey, why the heck not? You put up 42 points. I'm not going to nitpick there. Here's what I am going to nitpick. What on earth was happening defensively? Mike Elko is a defensive head coach. Texas A&M's personnel is, on paper, one of the 20 best in all of college football. UTSA, let's say, is lower than that. By the way, top 20 for Texas A&M with personnel, that's conservative, I would say. But that was not exactly the defensive showing you're looking for. Why did the Roadrunners go into Kyle Field and run for over 200 yards on the ground? Robert Henry Jr. went for 177 yards on 16 carries and 2 scores. Yikes. That needs to get cleaned up. You know who's going to have a giant commitment to running the football this week? Notre Dame. They just went to Miami and I think lost because while I understood the game plan of wanting to get CJ Carr easy completions and involved early in the game, as a result, they never established the run and got into a rhythm, and then all of a sudden they were down and they had to pass all the time. I bet that changes this week for Mike Denbrock and head coach Marcus Freeman. And they're going to look at this box score and watch the tape and go, wow, UTSA was carving up the Texas A&M defense? I didn't think that was going to happen, and yet it did. So 200-plus yards on the ground, 203 to be exact, at 6.2 yards a carry against UTSA could lead to problems against a Notre Dame team that I'm just going to tell you will be highly motivated this week. This is something to keep your eye on. This is not the highest concern that I have for one of the top 20 teams I'm talking about here, but it's something I noticed where I went, wait, why does UTSA have 24 points? They shouldn't have more than 10. They have 3 touchdowns on the road. They scored a touchdown in 3 consecutive quarters, second, third, and fourth. Now, that wasn't the worst performance against a Group of 5 or FCS program. I'll save the worst one for last year. Next one, to just, again, keep an eye on. Keep an eye. These are outcomes that probably flew under your radar. You didn't realize happened. You weren't watching because they're not supposed to be big games. And it wasn't always a serious threat. But then you looked to the scoreboard if you saw it and you went, why was it that close? Old Dominion went into Bloomington and only lost by 13 points. Indiana had 3 interceptions of Old Dominion quarterback Colton Joseph. 3 picks. Their defense looked great, aside from the part where they were seeing the read option for the first time in their entire lives. The first play of the game was a 75-yard touchdown run by Colton Joseph, the Monarchs quarterback. I mean, I have never seen linebackers bite so hard on a fake to a running back. They were running over there, and the quarterback just ran right behind him. Wasn't a good look. Fernando Mendoza, game 1 in that Curt Cignetti passing offense. Mendoza's fine. That's what I've said about him all offseason. He's fine. You can win games with him. Is he going to be as good as Curtis Work was last year? I'm not going to make a definitive distinction on one game. My suspicion is no. Through one game, I am correct. But we can't make a final conclusion. We got a data point. That's what we have. Take that for what it is. A data point, not a conclusion. When you put together a scientific experiment, you've got your hypothesis, the research, and then the conclusion. When you write a paper, intro, body, conclusion. Right now, we are in the research or the body phase, whichever metaphor you like there. And this is one of those points. Fernando Mendoza, 18 of 31, 193 yards, no touchdowns. Now, Indiana ran the ball for over 300 yards, so not a whole lot was asked of him. But against the Monarchs, I'd hope he could be a little bit more efficient than he was. He was not. They got stopped on a 4th down and goal-to-go situation twice. And for Indiana to have this start, it's not how you'd like to begin the season. Last year, Oregon struggled with Idaho and won the Big Ten. So there's plenty of time to change the tide. But it's just something to keep your eye on. Like, I've got Indiana as a pullback team this year. I've got them going 9-3 from last year's 11-1 because I trust Curt Cignetti. The passing game needs to look better than that. You're not going to run for 300 yards every game with Indiana's schedule. They play Oregon, they play Penn State. It's just they play Illinois. You're not going to run for 300 yards on those teams. You're probably going to run for about half of that. So even though Indiana has a good offensive line, here's the one that's the most concerning of all the top 20 teams that I wanted to talk about in this segment. What is going on with Kansas State? Now, by the time this show airs, Kansas State won't be a top 20 team. They should be a top 25 team, though after this past week's result, perhaps they are not going to be in that range. North Dakota is an FCS program, a darn good one, might I add. Do not underestimate, I should say, the Fighting Hawks. Why did the Fighting Hawks go into Manhattan in the home opener after you lost a heartbreaker to Iowa State, a game that I'm sure Kansas State fans feel they should have had, that they had every opportunity to win? You lost to a good team. All right, got punched in the mouth. Well, let's go recollect ourselves, get back on an American time zone, and then go back home and play North Dakota and get an easy win. What was going on here? North Dakota had the lead at the half, 21-17. The final score was 38-35. Maybe it was the readjustment. I want to think that this is the readjustment coming back from Ireland, because I watched that defensive front against Iowa State and thought, man, they look nasty. They look good. They look big. They look physical. They look like they are, as they should be, a strength of this Kansas State football team. Well, they weren't that against North Dakota because, man, you gave up 252 passing yards and did not force an interception and gave up 5 touchdowns and had to sweat out an FCS game. That's an inauspicious start. Inauspicious start. They've got Army this week, who's going to be red hot coming off an upset that they actually fell to in the game against Tarleton State, who's a top 10 FCS team coming into the year. Tarleton State's very good. They could be at the FBS level soon in Conference USA within the next couple of years. We'll see what happens. But Army is Kansas State's next game at home. They better win. I mean, they better win. They better look good. Big 12 plays right around the corner. I've only seen one game of Arizona so far, but I don't know. They did what they should do against Hawaii. They blew them out. Maybe they're a bounce-back team. But this is not the start that I was expecting from Kansas State, a team that I picked to go 10-2 and make the Big 12 championship game. Both of those things can still happen for the Wildcats. But through 2 weeks, there's some pretty serious concerns that Kansas State has right now. So those are 3 teams to just keep an eye on. I'm not making conclusions. I'm making observations. But these are observations that need to be made. The game tonight, North Carolina, TCU. TCU, swallow the points. Go Horned Frogs. I want TCU to win. And I'll tell you why. First, this episode brought to you by Rugia. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis, and maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugia Ready. Rugia Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that could take hours, Rugia's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast. On average, in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If traditional options haven't worked, Rugia might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. Head to rugia.com/lockedoncollege and use code LockedOnCollege to get 15% off today. That's rugiet.com/lockedoncollege. Use promo code LockedOnCollege for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugia website for full safety information. Check them out at rugiet.com/lockedoncollege. TCU has one of my favorite quarterbacks in all of college football coming into this year. That's Josh Hoover, who really could have made some noise. I don't think it was ever super serious, but if he'd wound up being Tennessee's quarterback after the Nico and Joey Aguilar swap and debacle, well, Joey Aguilar hadn't happened yet, but there were some rumors flying around that Josh Hoover had been contacted by SEC programs, but he's back with TCU. If you haven't watched him play before, you probably will on Monday night. Josh Hoover can really spin the football. I mean, throws one of the prettiest looking balls in the country. And the talent at quarterback in the Big 12 is really good. By the way, my Texas Tech Red Raiders quarterback Baron Morton has an injury and not confirmed to be out for a while, but I don't like hearing that. Cash Cleveland, the starting center, is already out for the first couple of weeks. I don't like what's happening. The Big 12 is just too hard to pick. Utah looks really good. Anyway, bringing this back to TCU. This is a game that TCU should win. Bill Belichick has never coached a game of college football before. I don't think he forgot everything about the game. I think we as a college football community, not me, but some out there, have forgotten the last time he was coaching. It was in the NFL. It was several years ago. And oh, by the way, he was going on this trajectory. For those listening on audio, I just did a descending plane. It was going down. He had left because, or was he fired? I don't even remember all the details of that. He wasn't good anymore. He was not good. Now, does he still have plenty of wisdom to teach college football players? Yes. How is that going to click in week 1? I don't know. What I do know is that TCU was a better team than North Carolina last year. TCU should be a better team this year than they were a season ago with a returning quarterback, and they have to take a step forward defensively because they weren't good enough last season. But the Horned Frogs have an advantage at quarterback. They have a more experienced staff. They have, I think, the better overall roster. There's some talent on this North Carolina team. Gio Lopez at quarterback, I'm not entirely certain who he's throwing the football to. I don't know what their trench play is going to look like. I don't know how these guys are going to respond to Bill Belichick's coaching style. But what I do know is that TCU was in a better place last year. They are favored in this game, and I am hoping the Horned Frogs get me back to 500 for my picks, both straight up and against the spread this week. Off to a, we'll say, middling start. How much more middling does it get than if TCU is able to cover the 3.5 points they are favored by, according to our friends at FanDuel? Then I will cover, or I will be at 8-8 for picks that I have made. Most of those have occurred here on this show. You can catch my Oregon pick for every game throughout the year over on Locked On Ducks. But over-unders 55.5. I will take the under again. That's been kind of my theme of the week. Most of the time, that's worked out pretty well in these big marquee standalone games. Miami and Notre Dame was pretty low scoring. Texas, Ohio State was very low scoring. South Carolina, Virginia Tech was a low scoring game as well. This total is 55.5. I just don't know. By the way, North Carolina, their staff, you got Steve Belichick on one side, Freddie Kitchens is the OC. Okay. I'm pulling for TCU because I want this Bill Belichick thing to flame out so that North Carolina can realize they made a mistake and they can go hire an actual coach that could guide their program into the future. Because I don't believe Bill Belichick's that guy. It's an interesting story. It's fun. I'll have a show for you on it later tonight, reacting to the game. But yeah, I have just had red flags about the Bill Belichick situation for quite a while. Now, Tar Heel fans, let me offer you this olive branch out there. I was down on Florida State coming into this year. Florida State, North Carolina, same win total according to our friends at FanDuel. Sometimes Vegas knows. Sometimes they give Florida State a win total of 10.5 last year, and wait for it, or 9.5. They went 2-10. So they don't know 100% of the time. But I'm fading North Carolina. I like TCU in this spot. I like them to win. I like them to cover the 3.5 points. I think TCU wins this game 31-17. You know, Gio Lopez is fun. He's got some gamer mentality to him back there at quarterback, kind of a poor man's Dylan Gabriel, if you will. But, yeah, I just don't know what would lead me to believe, other than the fact that this game isn't being played on TCU's home field. I don't know what would lead me to believe that North Carolina is going to win this game. Maybe I'll be wrong, and Bill Belichick will outperform expectations. We shall see. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. Until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.